Hi, everyone, and a warm welcome to another episode of the Talk Room series of podcasts. In this episode, we examine the question of how to be your best self. And we do that by examining mental health and well-being and how that applies to people's daily lives. For those people who have yet to see any of our previous podcasts, I'd like to introduce my co-presenter, Wendy. Wendy is a highly experienced accredited CBT psychotherapist and EMDR therapist in private practice. He's been involved in the field of mental health and well-being more generally for well over 35 years now. So welcome to you, Wendy.
Thank you so much, Ian. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I would like to introduce you. And Ian, you are a senior accredited National Counselling and Psychotherapy Society member and the founder of Hope Therapy and Counselling Services. So a very warm welcome to you, Ian.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you. Um, so today we're going to look at the subject of positive practice. So can we start by explaining, Wendy, what exactly do we mean by that term positive practice?
And most certainly, Ian. So cognitive behavior therapy, or CBT for short, often talks about how to resolve problems. But there is a lot of evidence-based literature that encourages us to focus more on positive practices, which is actually focusing on the positives. So I feel this is often overlooked. But if you can understand a number of techniques that I'm going to go through today, these can also really help you to improve your mental health. And if I can give some examples, Ian, yeah. So, why do I notice everything that's wrong and almost nothing that's good? Why are our minds like that? And also, I know the what I should be doing, but I don't actually practice the what's. Um, and another common one is I'm just waiting to feel better before I start living better. So my aim is to go through three areas of practice which all focus on positive practice. So the first one is called ACT, and that stands for Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. And I've spoken a lot about ACT in these podcasts because I'm a big fan. So the person who created this was Stephen C. Hayes. Um, and if I was to summarize ACT in a nutshell, it's kind of like how to stop fighting in your inner world of thoughts and feelings and negative physical sensations, and actually start to live and move towards the things that matter in your life. So that's ACT. The second one we're going to focus on is something called positive psychology. And this is an approach was created by a man called Martin Seligman. And he looks at the science of what helps humans flourish. Flourish. And I love that word. He's got a book on it. Not just function, actually, how can we flourish? And the third one, who's probably not quite so well known, but I really like his practices, and I think he's a great practitioner. And he talks about how to rewire your brain. So it's less focused on pain of life and negativity and more focused on the joy. So that's what we're doing today.
That's fascinating. Really fascinating, actually. So why focus on positive practice in the first place?
Okay, so there's a wide evidence of research saying that as humans, we focus more on what is negative around us. You just have to listen to the news and know how negative news sticks. It's so annoying, but they try and do good news, newspapers don't sell. You know, we love the negative. And the theory is that our basic brain, the more primitive part of our brain, is the threat brain. So this is always being activated. So the threat brain is designed to protect us. Therefore, in order to be alive, we naturally notice threats over joy or pleasure. So if you think of line A and line B, so line A is basking in the sunshine, eating a lovely piece of meat and just sort of sleeping, whereas the other line, B, is alert and looking around. If there's any danger, line B is more likely to survive because it's more alert to danger. So that's how our brains work. So it's often called a negativity bias. So our brain also notices threats faster than pleasurable events. So sometimes if you hear a loud bang outside, you immediately kind of alert and think, what's that? What's going on? And most people will just go, what on earth is that out? And they'll be curious and perhaps go to the window and look at it because it's something unusual. We actually manage to store more criticism about ourselves than praise. And have you ever been in the situation where you have a day and it's a fairly good day, and then one thing goes wrong? Perhaps you're shortchanged in a shop or somebody beeps you in the car, and you actually get really, really annoyed by that. And that kind of judges your whole day. So you've had like 24 and a half hours of absolutely no problem at all, and you have half an hour of issue, but you focus on that half hour of the issue. And we also are terrible at thinking of what might go wrong far more than what is okay. So we're constantly, catastrophizing and looking for threats. So that's why our brain is designed for survival, but it's terrible for our peace of mind.
Thank you, Wendy. That's really interesting. I think we've all noticed the person that's beeped their horn at us, and maybe not so much about the person that lets us out in the first place.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm thinking, what I'm wondering is, are there particular therapeutic approaches that promote positive practice?
Yes, and as I've already said, um, we're going to focus on ACT, positive psychology, and Rick Hanson, and they all kind of blend together. So you've got like a nice taking excerpts from all three, so you've got a really nice idea about a positive practice. Um, so one thing that ACT says is it's really keen on actually accepting and acknowledging experiences which may be uncomfortable, and not expecting to get rid of those to have a meaningful life. So what I find often with anxiety is people say, oh, I can't do that, I'll be too anxious.
Mm,
So they avoid it. And what ACT tries to do is to sort of start to work through the anxiety and tolerate and cope with the anxiety so that you engage in the actual experience. Say you've got a bit of social anxiety and you've been invited to a party. I'm actually working with a person now who's got that. And it's really important that they acknowledge and accept that there will be some anxiety there and how to sort of manage it rather than thinking they're going to go in there and actually be absolutely fine. That's not what happens. So that's one kind of idea. And positive psychology, it talks an awful lot about focusing on your strengths. What is it about you which makes you a unique, positive person? What it is about the meaning you give to things as well. So, for example, going to a party, it might not matter to some people, but if you're actually wanting to make more friends, maybe if say you're going to university and you actually haven't got any friends, going to that party is probably extremely important because you really want to network and socialize. So,
mm,
if there's more meaning there, you're more likely to do it. Positive psychology also talks about engagement, actually really being engaged in the process, being fully involved in the process. And that's another thing that I think is often overlooked. Actually, when you're really fully absorbed in something, you can get a lot of joy from that. And it can be great sort of experience for your brain as well, and can also connect to the pleasure. Examples can be, one of my favorite examples is gardening. So, not so much now at the moment, but if you go out in the garden and you really get into digging up the earth and the satisfaction of planting new bulbs, or actually seeing your plants grow and just looking around at the flowers and smelling things. That is a very engaging experience, and that can really give a positive reaction to our well-being. Mindfulness is also quite good at doing this as well. And the other thing with positive psychology is connection. It's sometimes, what the problem is nowadays, we're all on our phones, we're all doom scrolling, we're all on games, all on these devices, and they're they're really kind of designed to catch your attention. And what we miss out now is a connection between people. So it's all about building that connection, not losing those skills that we need. Human contact. We're designed as social mammals, and we need that connection.
Mm. Mm.
So the third one is Rick Hanson. And what he really focuses on is actually we can miss pleasant experiences. We can kind of like, they just can be so fleeting, we don't notice them. So he talks a lot about installing these positive experiences so that they stay in the brain further and we don't just ignore them. I mean, that's a lovely idea. And I love the idea is that, we savor the moments more. And that's so good for our mental health.
Mm.
So it's not about, I mustn't think negatively. The goal is, I need to learn just to hold on to my difficult thoughts and emotions lightly while deliberately growing the positive. So I'm hoping that makes sense to you, Ian. Hopefully it does.
Perfectly. Is there more that you want to say about that, Wendy? I mean, I'm intrigued.
Okay, good. I'm glad you're intrigued. That's a good sign. Okay. So going into a little bit more detail then. So back to ACT again. So ACT talks about 3 steps: opening up, stepping back, and moving towards. And I'll explain those 3 steps as well. So opening up is actually just acknowledging that the thoughts and the feelings are there. Okay. Sometimes in cognitive behavior therapy, we're asked to challenge the thoughts.
Mm.
And there's nothing wrong with challenging the thoughts. But what often happens, people then sort of get into an argument as part of your brain saying, don't go, it's not, it's too risky. And then the other part of your brain saying it'll be absolutely fine. But you end up just fighting. So
Mm.
it's actually sort of just accepting that you might have those thoughts and feelings. Okay. And then it's actually reminding yourself that they are just thoughts. They are just mental representations in your mind. They are not facts. So telling yourself before you go to a party, I won't enjoy it. I mean, that's just a thought. There's no fact because you
Mm.
haven't even gone to the party yet.
Mm.
So we constantly have to sort of like bear in mind our thoughts and how we view our thoughts, and actually rather notice their thoughts and not actually factual evidence.
Mm.
So I love that about ACT. It's actually just having a different relationship with your thoughts. I think is really, really helpful. And then the third step in ACT is to, however you feel, even if you feel don't want to, you feel overwhelmed, if that's important for you to go to that party, you attend. Whatever happens, you've gone. Because you've actually learnt to actually not to give in to these unpleasant thoughts and feelings. You've actually learnt to work through them. And then hopefully, if you go to the party, a lot of your fears are actually untrue and you're much more likely to have a good time and feel good.
Mm.
So let's think of a difficult feeling perhaps you've been trying to get rid of lately. So it could be anxiety. Common negative feelings are anxiety, guilt, shame, grief, or envy. And then just be aware and notice how much time and energy do you spend fighting it. And this could be over distraction, so you're just trying to ignore it, numbing out, or overworking, overcompensating, or maybe just scrolling on your phone. Okay. And does it provide a better response? No. Okay. So don't give in to the war that we have when we create negative thoughts. Okay. So just try this for a short moment. So if it feels safe, just place a hand on your chest or your stomach, whatever you feel comfortable with, that's absolutely fine. And just notice what's there at the moment. It could be, for example, it could be some feelings of anxiety, pressure, sadness, guilt, shame, whatever is there. And just say very quietly to yourself, I might not love this feeling, but just for now, I'm willing to allow it to happen. So then I can focus more on what matters to me. So this is how we accept discomfort. We name it, we don't judge it, it's just there, but we don't allow it to overtake us and overtake our behavior. So the next step in ACT, as we said before, is this idea of diffusion. So an example could be, instead of saying, I'm a failure, you have a thought you're a failure, you say to yourself, I'm noticing that I'm having a thought that I'm a failure. Instead of saying, I can't cope, you say, my mind is telling me I can't cope. Now, it might sound very small, but when I do this with people in my practice, they can already see the difference. It creates a little bit of distance between your thought and you're telling yourself you having a thought. And this can be significant enough just to give you enough space to actually therefore change your behavior because you're becoming aware that it is a thought in your head rather than a fact. And then with ACT, the third stage is moving towards something that you feel is valuable in your life. So you can ask yourself some really useful questions. So what kind of person do I want to be in this moment? What do I want my life to stand for? What are my values? And values are directions and not goals. Examples of values could be being a caring parent, being honest, being someone who wants to learn and develop, or someone who contributes. So you just choose a value that you want and what's important for you. If we go back to the party example, a value could be is I want to enjoy the university experience. I want to connect with people. I want to make good friends and actually enjoy the experience. That could be an example of that value. Okay. And then the next step is to just to ask, what's one tiny, tiny, tiny action that moves me 1% in that direction today? So ACT encourages us to act even spite of how we think and feel. So you don't wait until you feel confident. And actually, by going to the party, you'll learn the skills to be confident. Not wait until you feel calm. You learn how to be calm by putting yourself in situations which cause you anxiety, and you get better at dealing with it. So you might have your hands might be shaking, you might be having these raging thoughts in your head. It can be difficult, but that's okay. You still go.
That's
So
fascinating.
that's that.
That's
Go on.
fascinating.
Sorry.
Thank you, Wendy. So, if I understand that, by defining our values, so what's important to us, that just helps us to find that sense of direction that's meaningful to us, and to find a way to accept your negative thoughts and not let them define who we are. Is that right? Have I understood that properly?
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect summary, Ian. That's really good. It shows you are listening. So thank you for that. Yeah, I think that's a really, really good summary. And it takes a little bit of thinking, I think, ACT, because it's a bit different to CBT, these values and accepting your thoughts. But once people understand it, that I think they make rapid progress because they're doing it all the time. So yeah, thank you for summarizing that. So I just want to now integrate positive psychology into this as
Hmm.
well. Um, so um, as I said before, he focuses more on positivity and living your life to the full. I said before, he he wrote a book called Flourish, which is about living, thriving rather than surviving. And he has created this little saying, which is called PERMA. And PERMA stands for P stands for positive emotions. We've talked a lot about those. Engagement, which is about flow and absorption. So an example is, being in the garden and enjoying your garden. R stands for relationships. M stands for meaning. We've also already talked about meaning in act. And accomplishment is actually achieving. Okay. So although we want to be positive, we're realistic. We can't exist in a permanent high. So we cultivate these 5 aspects alongside life's difficulties. So if you were to put them together, so when you act on your values, what's meaning to you, you actually increase a sense of meaning and accomplishment. So going back to the party example, you go there to make connection, to make friends. If you actually manage to do that and you have meaningful conversations with people and you do connect, you actually feel so much better. The fulfillment comes into your body. So that's a good example.
Mm.
When you show up fully to activities you care about, you access the feeling of engagement. If we go back to the example of the garden, when you're really involved in the garden, if you're fully looking at the 5 senses, the smell of the flowers, the color of the leaves, the color of the berries at the moment as well, again, it really feeds that wellness and that love and that joy in your brain as well. So this is really interesting, when you choose actions which you think are right for you, so example, showing some courage, turning up for relationships, focusing on relationships, if you grow your relationships, you're growing again that connection as well.
Mm.
So sometimes when your mental health is poor, it can be really hard for you to actually engage with other people. You tend to withdraw, especially if you're depressed, you tend to withdraw and do nothing. So part of actually getting better is trying to re-engage with relationships, however small. It might be that 1%, it might be that text that you send an old friend to just say, hi, I'm thinking of you. You've taken that 1% step, and that should actually help you feel a bit better.
Mm.
And then the other thing I think is absolutely something I really, really love. PERMA focuses on savoring and gratitude. So you naturally increase your positive emotions. And I've seen people do this in therapy. They come back and they're actually grateful they've got a job. They're grateful that their boss isn't too bad. They're grateful that they can actually go for a walk at lunchtime, and that's sort of good for their well-being. They're grateful that they can work from home. So rather than actually wanting more or looking at all the negative things in our lives, they sort of turn it around and start to notice things that are more positive in their life. And that's how you can simply increase feelings of positive emotions.
Mm. Mm.
So it's not fixing all your feelings. Again, before, it's quite realistic. It's about similar to ACT. Flourishing by Martin Seligman is about building a meaningful, connected, growth-orientated life, even if my feelings are not always great. So you can see how these align well and helps people to build a life full of meaningful actions, even if you still have some challenges with your negative thoughts and feelings.
Mm. Mm. That's fascinating again, Wendy. So it's more about using these 5 areas in your life to create positive feelings and engagements, but still acknowledging that life has struggles as well.
Perfect summary, Ian. Done it again.
Almost as
That's
though I was
really
listening to you, Wendy.
yeah, yeah. You're listening. That's really, really good. Well done. I'm going to give you that positive emotion there
Thank
about
you.
and be
Thank
very
you.
grateful that you're listening as well. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Uh, and I think what I like about these approaches is they understand that there's neuroscience here. They understand how the brain works been researched, we do have a negative bias. So we actually have to put more effort into experiencing the positive. And these are just examples how you can. So if it's okay with you, I just want to go into the third part, which is the work from Rick Hanson. So this is like the cherry on top of the icing of the chocolate cake with chocolate bits in it. Okay. So so this is about how does a brain remember the positive experiences and reinforce them. Okay. So as I said before, the brain is biased to remember the bad, but you can train it to remember the good by staying with some positive emotional experiences long enough for them to sink in. So again, a three-step approach. You start with noticing a positive or just an okay experience. If you struggle to find a really positive experience, again, if you're depressed, it can be quite hard to find anything positive. So something that is okay. And then he says, enrich it. So you focus on it, say for at least 10 to 20 seconds. So you stay with it, you linger on it, you feel it fully. You really stay with it. And then you absorb it. You imagine it sort of sinking into your brain, becoming part of you. So you almost like infuse it into your body as well. So that's what Rick Hanson adds. So even if you're feeling bad, you can still notice what's good. Even if you're feeling terrible, low, depressed, in bed, everything like that, you can still work towards feeling what's good. So Hanson says we don't have to let the storm erase every trace of blue sky either. So even in a storm, and I'm sure you've looked up on the weather as well, and it can be very, very grey. But sometimes you just notice that bit of blue sky. And then if you focus on the blue sky and really notice it and look at its beautiful colour, you can actually start to feel quite positive, and you can see it raises your positive feelings by focusing on the bit of blue sky. Okay, so maybe today you feel anxious, so let's make room for that anxiety, and then at the same time look around. Is there anything enjoyable or interesting you notice, however small? Depending where you are, you could be having a warm drink with you as well. Or maybe you can look at your messages, maybe your social media or on your phone. Look at a message from someone who's wished you well, who's cared, who's contacted you. The fact that you are listening to this podcast shows that you believe you can get better, you can have more positive experiences. Okay, so decide on one thing, and I'm going to just look outside the window, and it's actually a grey sky and it's got lots of bare trees in there. Okay, so I'm going to stay with that just for a few breaths. Just take some nice deep breaths, let your shoulders drop. And even though I'm looking at grey sky and rain, okay, I'm just noticing the trees. And when I look at the trees, I actually think, wow, they're so solid. They're so majestic. They're so good for the environment. And I know that they will eventually spring forth, blossom and buds. So I've got a little bit of anticipation and looking forward to the spring. Okay. So can you see how that actually sort of works in practice? Even on a dull day with lots of grey, it's so easy to look at the dull day and all the grey. But if you turn it around and find something positive on it and just focus on that, that can actually sort of change how you feel.
Mm, mm,
So little things you can do. These are very, very small things. You might be in an irritated mood. You might want to, bite the head of your partner or something like that. But you choose to speak kindly to them and actually savor that as well. You could be exhausted, depressed, really, really struggling. But that 5-minute walk is a massive achievement. Okay. You can perhaps be struggling how to compose an email to somebody, a difficult email to say, but once you do that, celebrate it as well. You've managed to actually have a few seconds before you doom scroll. You don't go straight to doom scrolling and look at all the awful stuff on social media. You've actually put your phone down for a minute and you haven't done it. Okay. And so it's really important that you are therefore, however small the steps are, you're building that positive self-belief of yourself.
Mm.
Okay. So that is a summary of how positive experiences work. So try and do that on a daily practice. Again, the idea of sinking things in is quite a simple little idea, but it can be really, really effective on actually producing these positive emotions in you as well. So give it a go. Go outside or just look outside and see whether you can notice something which you can actually savor and feel gratitude with.
Mm.
So that is my positive psychology podcast.
That's really, really interesting, Wendy. So to summarize, your brain isn't actually broken. It's more that historically it's just over prepared for danger. There's that negativity bias that you made reference to earlier, and under practiced at resting in what's good.
Yep, very good. Yep, great summary again. ACT helps you to stop wasting your life on an inner war you can't win and start moving, even if it's imperfectly, towards what is important in your life, your meaning and value you give to your life. Positive psychology focuses on that I can't say it. Well-being is buildable through meaning, engagement, connection, small wins, and they actually create a real sense of joy in your life. And then the third one, Rick Hanson's work shows that we can actually change our brain to still acknowledge that the brain needs safety, that's fine, but to infuse positive moments where we can actually take in more positive, more kindness, more strength, more gratitude. And we can do that. So you don't have to feel amazing to live a meaningful life. It's these small little changes you can make. You can still be in pain, but you can still grow positive experiences. One small breath, one tiny values-based action, one savored moment at a time. That is the work. So you are not your thoughts. You are the person who chooses what you do next.
Thank you again, Wendy. That's really, really interesting. And really valuable top tips that anybody can follow. So finally, if people have listened to the podcast and are looking for professional help, what should people do next?
So if they want to contact me, it's best to find me on my website, wendycastellina.com. There's lots of free resources on there as well. There's some meditations you can listen to. There's some ebooks which are free to download, or can have a short conversation with me to see whether they would like to work with me. And what about you, Ian? How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so organisations such as Hope Therapy and Counselling Services, we regularly work with people with a whole variety of conditions and presentations, and the types of things that we've talked about today are exactly what we might work with. So people are very welcome to take a look at our website, which is www.hopeforminds.co.uk. That's www.hopeforminds.co.uk. People are very welcome to book in for a completely free a 15-minute consultation with us. We can go through these ideas in more detail. We can try to understand a little bit about what the client's contending with, and then just talk through these ideas along with other ideas that might be supportive as well. And we've also got a huge amount of free resources on the website too, so people are very welcome just to take a look at that and download anything that they would find useful. So really just for me to thank you, Wendy, for today. It's been absolutely fascinating as always. Um,
Thank
and
you, Ian.
I,
Thank you for listening.
always, I wouldn't dare not, Wendy. I wouldn't dare not. So thank you to our viewers and our listeners. And I look forward to seeing everybody, including yourself, Wendy, very shortly.
Thank you. And thank you to listeners as well.